Good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot. Gunner Shot में आप सबका स्वागत है. Today we are going to talk of something very interesting. And what are we going to talk of? We're going to talk of India needs to learn from Cholas. We're going to revisit our roots because what the Cholas did and what the Cholas faced is something like what we are facing today. And for this interaction, and it's an interesting interaction, I have with me Colonel DPK Pillay. First, let me welcome him.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good evening, Colonel Pillay. Welcome to Gunner Shot. This is the first time. It's an honor for me that you are here.
Thank you, sir.
And let me explain to everyone who Colonel Pillay is. Let me introduce you to him. First and foremost, he's a veteran. That's natural. The second thing is he's a highly decorated officer. Not everyone in the Indian Army gets a Shaurya Chakra. And plus, he is a soldier scholar. He writes extensively. He's writing a book. He delves into history. He delves into sociology, societal aspects of India. And I've read a couple of his articles, and I was very impressed with the approach he took, which is absolutely positive towards India. And that too without being jingoistic. It's all down to earth. Now, after retirement, he's held many important assignments, including in the National Security Secretariat. And these days, he's with one of the leading think tanks in India, the MPIDSA, that is Manohar Parrikar, right? Institute of Study and Defense Analysis. And he wrote a couple of articles recently which I thought were outstanding. And that is why I thought I'll get him to speak to all of you. And this one, which he wrote about Cholas, and in this article, he's described how the Cholas faced multiple friends, overcame them, and established an empire for 3 centuries. Right? And it's a marvel. And I mean, if I know my history right, the Chola Empire went right up to Cambodia, the Khmer Peninsula. And I've been to Angkor Wat, one of the biggest, in fact, it's not one of the biggest temple, it is the biggest temple, Hindu temple in the world. And that was built in the Chola era. How is it that our predecessors or ancestors had such a huge empire in those days where there were no communications, no nothing, no internet, no zero, right? And they could control trade from here up to the Western Pacific. And today we are struggling just to control our neighborhood. There must be something wrong. And to explain what was right then and what's wrong now and how do we get back, I'll request Colonel Pillay. Pillay, all yours, take off.
I know, sir. We, for some reasons, we've been actually conditioned to believe that we are a very non-aggressive, non-invasionist, pacific race, which is not the case. We actually, if you look at the history of the world, we are probably the only country or the only civilization that has been continuously existing since long, from times immemorial. Like it's very clear that India and its Sanskrit and Tamil literature amongst the oldest spoken languages in the world, and it also is amongst the oldest literatures that we have is Indian. And it's interesting that if you study all that has happened and been coming through our ages, whether it's our epics called the Mahabharata or the Ramayana, these are all military epics. These are all epics which tells us about stories about leadership, military accomplishments, and others. But for some reason, we've been, in the last 70 odd years only, we kind of been told that we are a very pacific, non-invasionist, and all that. But frankly, if you look at the Cholas or any period of history that our Indian civilization has been through, there has been violence all the time. Violence has been met by equal amount of violence. It's been, replied by militaries, the organization. If you read the Arthashastra that has been written, it's not just about military matters. It's an entire treatise on several things. Which Chanakya has written. It also talks about the military things. It came out as a result of the Greek invasion of this country, and we are led to believe that the Greeks defeated Porus in the battle, which is not true. It's if Greek had defeated us, why would they leave from here and go? Why would they just leave an ambassador in this place? And Seleucus Nicator was left behind here, and why would they leave and go? Because it's very clearly, when the Greeks saw that the Indian expanse, the Indus River, the elephants that they had for the first time, they encountered such huge, majestic elephants. They actually didn't want. They completely lost their morale, and they wanted to go back. And the Arthashastra is an amazing piece of literature which talks about economy. And this is something that I'm sad that our country, we don't really read those and study those and understand what is it that those people in those periods of time, those leaders, those people, that civilization went through. Now, when you talk about Cholas, it's an amazing thing. It was one of the most world's lesser talked about imperial powers, which ruled great parts even before all this British Empire or the great European colonization came in. The Cholas existed. They dominated, and they were a tiny community. They were a tiny kingdom. They had the Cheras in the south of Kerala, the parts that are in Kerala that had the port of Kollam. We had a very thriving trade that used to go on. And if you read Pliny's thing about the Roman Empire, he says one of his greatest losses or lament is that the amount of money that goes into the Indian peninsula, like to the ports here, because all the luxury that came in and everything. So that showed that, we were seafarers, we did a lot of trade. And so the Cholas they had problems with the Chalukyas, they had the Pallavas, they had the Pandyas, they had the Cheras, and how did they tackle all those problems that existed? It is interesting that how they actually created alliances, and then they dislodged the eminent power, and went on to dominate. Even today, if you go to Sri Lanka, the sacking of Anuradhapura, I don't know whether you've been there, say in Sri Lanka. It is one of the greatest sackings that ever took place. The attack took place through Kollam, the port in Kollam, where this thing is there, and the Chola navy went in. And then you had this Ganga Konde Chole. He expanded the empire all the way through. And then, of course, when the Song dynasty was in China, the Cholas there was a problem about the trade that was taking place, and Cholas created an entire navy. We talk about the Normandy invasion, about a 600 strong navy, landing crafts and everything that went. But in Rajaraja Chola's time, 1,000-ship navy was prepared, each of which carrying infantrymen in it, and they landed off Srivijaya, established a new order, which even the Chinese couldn't dislodge thereafter. So it's something which is amazing, which we don't realize. We talk about, we were colonized for a long time, we were a slave country. This is all bunkum bullshit, sir, because if you look at it, when have we been actually colonized? Let's look at the history of the world, okay? Now, when the Roman Empire fell, you had the Dark Ages coming in Europe, and there's a large amount of this thing. But India continued to thrive. India had its period, it had its empire. The southern empires were never invaded, and we had this very, very interesting thing. Is when in 1453, when the Constantinople fell to the Muslim Ottomans, and the empire collapsed, and then they stopped all trade to India overland. That's when Pope told that, hello, guys, come here. European Christians, please get together and find a new trade route to India, because India, the entire thing, it is not just paper. There was a lot of trade, that wealth that came in, the cotton, the calicut, the linen, the silks. There are a large amount of things that came in from Kerala. And they said that need to find a route. And that's how Christopher Columbus went looking for India and found America instead. And that's why they call them Red Indians in 1492. And 1498, very cautiously, Vasco da Gama came, hugging the coast of Africa. He went around the Cape of Good Hope. Bartholomew Diaz had come earlier, about 6 years earlier, and there was somebody else who'd come and stayed here. But they knew that India, there was a route here, with the Arabs knew. But they came, and then they landed up in a port called Malindi in Kenya, today modern-day Kenya. And there they found a Malayali a guide, a navigator, and he just got them straight. 1498, he landed and brought them to Cochin. Now, so this is a very, very Calicut. So this is a very thriving port. If you look at why would people want to come to India in those days, it was not just for the spices and peppers. So it was a very, very thriving metropolis. India was Kerala, the part that they came in was the New York of today, like it's the America or Europe of today, because it is a bustling center for trade, commerce, education, the mathematics, the literature, you had all these things, this astronomy. You go to temples in Tamil Nadu, you'll find those constellations drawn on, carved in the temples on the roof there. How would they be able to do it without a telescope? And exactly the constellations as we know, the 27 stars, nakshatras that we have, is all carved there. Now, this is something that these guys were really good. People came here. Shushurata's treatise on surgery was translated. Then Ibn, the algebra was translated. All these things were taken away. They're wrongly called Arabic numerals. These are all Indian numerals. They came here because it is a bustling center for education, for trade, for commerce. And when these guys, Vasco da Gama, came here, he looked around. There was a lot of prosperity. And he said, they'd just come. They'd broken out from and colonization that had taken place in the 1400s, and they just broke free from there. And they hated the Muslims. They said no trade should be carried out with the Moors. And the king of Calicut, Zamorin, said, nothing doing. I'm not interested in, your trade, because what they brought was like, what a beggar in Mecca wouldn't also give. That's what they said when they looked at the gifts the Portuguese Vasco da Gama had brought. And they Indians looked at it with scorn. And the issue is that they were never able to understand what drove it. India was a very peaceful country. They came in here. They brought a new, it's wrongly taught to us that 1526 is when, the history book written by all our famous historians or historians, they've written that 1526 in the first battle of Panipat is when you found gunpowder being used. It is not so. When the man at war, these ships that came from Portugal, they had these huge gunships. They would come and bombard our cities, and then they wanted alliances to be made, broken up, and and finally in 15 or 10, the combined fleets they defeated them in a battle, and they moved away to Goa. They dislodged the thing, and you had a very interesting. So there was never a period that any community got to dominate Indian subcontinent. Even they talk about the Mughal invasions as it's not so. When definitely there was a lucky shot that Akbar got in the second battle of Panipat, where Hemo Chandra got a shot in his eyes and he slumped over the howdah. And that's when the people thought he was defeated. And that's how the empire was established, the Mughal empire. But when Aurangzeb, he tried to impose a very, very unilateral kind of a hard decision, the people revolted. And then you had the Marathas actually ruling this part. The British came here and actually didn't take power from the Mughals. They took it from the Marathas, actually. The Marathas are the dominant power that was there. So it's interesting when you see that India has been a story of multiple campaigns, battles, and everything. And unfortunately for us, we've suddenly gone into this very Pacific mode. Even after independence, if you look at it, so this Anglo-Pakistani invasion of 1947-48, I call it an Anglo-Pakistani invasion because we were barely independent on 15th of August, 1947. And by October 24th, they were ready to invade our country. And how would that happen? The Britishers ruled over this subcontinent for 200 years. They were from 1757. They were ruling over. You think they didn't know that an invasion of this scale was being planned? You think I don't know the reason why India allowed, Pakistan allowed it, because Pakistan had a reason. They were created by the British for a particular reason. But why did Indians allow British commanders in chief in our army? Why did we allow a viceroy to be there? It's interesting, somehow. And then the way we went on. But the fact is, India snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. We actually got Kashmir, and there have been actually very, very strategic, important things that we've learned, and we shouldn't let that martial spirit in our country, in our thinking, get denuded. And we shouldn't really. There are a lot of lessons in not just the Cholas; it's also the Vijayanagara Empire, Hakka Bukka's empire. There's a lot of lessons in in Shivaji, the Maratha Empire. There's a lot of lessons in everything, even the battles fought by Ashoka or Chandragupta Maurya, or there are many, many lessons that we need to learn to understand. even if you study, the Palasi Raja's campaign against the Duke of Wellesley in Kerala, it's very interesting. Duke of Wellesley was the guy who went and defeated Napoleon in the famous battle at Waterloo. He got his training here. The Palasi Raja is the guy who actually taught him the importance of, keeping his forces in the maneuver warfare. What he learned and what he employed on the Napoleonic forces was something that he was trained here in the battle. It's not the battle in the they say in the school, the playgrounds of Eton. It's not so. It is here in Palasi Raja's Western Ghats that he actually learned his lessons, and it's interesting. So we must read a lot of our history. We must feel proud about it, and we must be, even in today's history, we modern day Indians history, that we've actually done a lot of significant operations. It's only off late that we become a very timid thing. If you look at the intervention in Sri Lanka or in Maldives, or in when we are willing to go to Mauritius and Seychelles, and we were capable of actually doing out of area operations and everything. But somehow now, when inimical forces are taking over in parts of Bangladesh or Nepal, or in Maldives, I don't know why we're sitting as passive bystanders and let events take over. I just, it doesn't go with the grain of an Indian mind. So I hope I didn't
Yeah.
talk too much. But
No. Perfect. You were very interesting. Right. I think you made some very important points. And let's go one by one. The first point which you made is that look, India has never been a passive bystander. India has always been imperialistic, if I may say, outward looking. Right. It We've had trade with the Arabs from a long time. We've also had trade with the East Asian countries, or right, for a long time, and we had trade as far as going back to the Chinese, right? And like we started with this issue of Cholas. The Cholas, like you said, they had to fight with the Cheras, the Pandavas, and the Ceylonese, and then they turned their attention to the north, the Rashtrakutas, Chalukyas, and all that. It was a multi-front kind of a situation. Or do you see any equations between the multi-front situation? Let me talk of Cholas first, and then we'll go back to the rest of the issues. Between the multi-front situation with the Cholas handled and what we are facing today, and yeah.
So we faced that kind of a situation in the 1971 war. Now let's go back to the 1971, and I think that's one of the most decisive actions that the Indian forces did. Very correctly, that we chose to delay our battle very strategically till such time that the monsoons were over, and the Indian forces had also trained, and we also were capable of. So when you look at it, that's a very interesting angle. In 1970 December, there was a huge cyclone that hit East Pakistan
Bangladesh. Yeah.
in Bangladesh, and that is earlier called the Cyclone Bola. And the way the Punjabi Muslims actually treated the East Pakistanis, I feel very bad that they actually gone around destroying those memory. They don't realize that the Westerners, who were the Punjabi elites, they thought that they were superior to the dark skinned Bengali speaking Muslims, and they never thought them as equal to them. And the thing is, they treated them very badly. Yahya Khan would say, "Oh, they're meant to die," and they never really. So that's when Mujibur Rahman came to power, and he rallied the entire thing. There was a strong march. There was an election, and when he won that election, he was placed under arrest, and people were rounded up, and Operation Searchlight started, and they killed a large number of people. And now look at the things, the trauma that India faced. India was a very poor country those days. I don't know whether you recall. I remember, the Parthenium. I grew up in Bangalore, and children got asthmatic of the Parthenium weed, which was there. That came as part of the deal that the Americans used to send to us, and it's very interesting. Lyndon B. Johnson, an American president, who really, India was a democracy, very struggling democracy. It was working very hard to uplift millions of people out of poverty, and it was taking them. He would say that I would give a monthly waiver for your shipments. And when Indira Gandhi had gone to White House to meet the president, she was made to wait for half an hour, and she had to come because we were really suffering, in the sense we were short of food, and We're short of wheat and everything, and then when they kept them, waiting and treated us a very, very big country, powerful country in the region, in the sense middle level power, and she decided, I'm never ever going out to the begging bowl again, and that's how our green revolution came into effect. And so what I'm trying to say is the Americans never treated us well then, and I don't think they would treat anyone well, because the only thing that the Americans are interested is in their own national interests. They would drop them. It's something that they're very good at. If you read their history, they've abandoned their allies, whether it's the Shah of Iran or whether it's the Pakistan after the Taliban era. They've just abandoned them. So it's not something that you should put your eggs in all their baskets, because they're definitely not a reliable partner in many ways. And so when Yahya Khan was inflicting genocide in that region in East Pakistan, he was killing millions of people, created refugees of all people. Nobody sided with India, who was actually bearing the brunt. The Americans never said, hello, Mr. Yahya Khan, you got to stop this. They said, no. There was George Bush, the father Bush, the elder senior. He was in the United Nations. You must read some of the interventions in the United Nations. We were made to be the perpetrators of this. It's not the Bhola, the bad treatment. It is not the arrest of the democratic process. It is not anything else. It was that Indians are creating problem for Pakistan, where all the people were being killed there. It wasn't Yahya Khan's fault. It was the Indians' fault that, that their people were starving and hungry. They were turned into refugees. And they never intervened when this genocide took place. And when December 3rd, when they attacked our airfields and the war was declared officially, we went in. The Americans moved the USS Enterprise in the Bay of Bengal. Now, if this is not multi-dimensional chess, what is it? Indian forces, there was this, I'm from Four Guards. And General Sagat Singh was very particularly fond of Four Guards. General Himmat Singh was a commandant. Our commanding officers are called the commandant from the time it was raised because of its. So he went around with him in a chopper and he surveyed the whole Meghna River, and he realized that there are no defenses there. So he asked General Himmat, would you be ready to go across? And then of course, Four Guards, being Four Guards, is a battalion that has never lost a battle in its entire 225 years of history. He said definitely, and then they were the first ones. Major Chandrakant and they all, those battalion went across the Meghna, and then of course there was the airdrop, and there was this people who landed the para. They just landed in Dhaka, and then of course Dhaka fell, and that's the reason why Bangladesh was created. And so we did play a multi-dimensional chess there, where when if you remember in 1970, Henry Kissinger had gone to Nepal. Sorry, not Nepal, to Pakistan. And then he said he's got a bad stomach. And then that's when he flew to Peking those days, and he met the Chinese and told them that Indians act funny. Make sure that you open another front here. And luckily for us, the Chinese have never intervened in any of their, it's for some reason. And so we were actually playing a multi-dimensional chess, the kind that, where you have so many levels and so many opponents and so many strategies taking place at different levels. So Indians have done. So even now we have that kind of a thing. And I really, one thing I want to ask you, sir, is my father generation was born in an India that was defined from, Afghanistan, and Burma had not been liberated from India, or that act had not come. And, from that area till the very extremities of Burma, India was India, under the British. On 15th of August, suddenly, who were Indians till 14th of August, suddenly became Pakistanis, right? So there's nothing set in stone which says that, this is the boundary and this has been endorsed to us by so-and-so. I don't think there's any reason that we should really hesitate in kind of altering the status quo. We should really take the battle into the enemy's territory. And we shouldn't be the one who are the recipients of, on the receiving end of any strategy of the other side. We should be the strategists. We should decide. I don't know why in 1971, when we liberated a country at great cost, why wouldn't we negotiate for, if you look at it, Chittagong was never part of it was never a Muslim majority area, but Mountbatten decided to give it to the Pakistanis for whatever reason. And that's where the 7th Fleet was going to land. And so why wouldn't we take back Chittagong Hill Tracts? Why wouldn't we take back, something that is lacking in our There's a joke. There's this friend of mine, Sandeep Punitan, who says that like the four lions of the Ashoka pillar, we have our four departments looking in four different directions. I think until we all look like in one direction and we decide that this is our objective and we accomplish it, I don't think because honestly, we have all the four wings are capable. The armed forces are good. We have some of the finest brains in our country. We have some of the finest strategists in our country. We have everything, but it's just that matter of all of them sitting together and kind of planning it out. So it is, even in this situation, we do have an opportunity. We should alter the status quo. We shouldn't be reactionary. We should actually, we should. I really think, I don't want to prescribe anything, but the only way is to take the battle into the enemy and handle the smaller, easier threats first. Take them piece by piece, and then go on, so that, and show me one example in the world where people have intervened to change the situation. So please let me, when has anyone intervened in the interest of, hello, we need to preserve this? And if you're strong, it's the law of the big trucks. So the people respect you. It's people don't respect a pacific, docile, with their head down. Even in human relations, we only respect those people who has some kind of a. You agree, right, sir? It's not something that when you're pacific and docile and everything, you're worked all over. But if you stand firm and look that man in the eye, and whether you're a general or whether you're the boss, or you look him in the eye, that man he would respect you. It's never a person who puts his head down and do what you want to do and offer my other cheek. It's not going to work. It's never worked. Nobody, it might be said in the Bible that meek will inherit the earth, but I don't think meek has ever inherited the earth so far, at least.
Yeah, I think you put on a lot of things. One of the things you said, look, you need to be outward looking, you need to assert yourself. And my basic proposition is, if you need to assert yourself, you know, there has to be a lot of synergy between your military and your politics. And if you look at all the histories of our empires, great empires, whether it's Ashoka or the Chola Empire itself, or the Mughal empires also, there's a great deal of synergy between the military and the politics. Uh, you think it's lacking today, and you need to do something about it, so that it is only then that you can start really asserting and dominating your areas of interest.
See, in the ancient times, sir, generals, the military, the kings were also the commanders in chief of their armed forces. They
So
personally
yeah,
led them.
yeah, yeah. So that means, yeah, you made a very important point. The kings were the commanders in chief. So the military authority and the political authority were one. And today
Absolutely.
there's a split. Yeah, please go ahead.
So there's something that that's something, the divide in our north block and south block should be really bridged. It's a very narrow road that divides both the sides, but I think the chasm is too big. I think we need to really sit down together, and it has to be for many years, even insurgencies in our country, it is something that is outsourced to the army. If it's Kargil, it's an army's failure. So, excuse me, how is it an army's failure? Where's the intelligence? Where is where are the agencies that are responsible to tell you all this? How can it be the army's failure? 1962 was an army's failure. Hello, excuse me, wasn't it your IB guy who said to move ahead and that forward wicket policy? So that kind of a thing where you quickly pass the buck on to somebody else, you know, uh, it's something that needs course correction. We need to understand that there was an era in the early time when India had just become independent, and the region, the dictatorships were coming up and springing up like anything, whether it's in Pakistan or everywhere around the region. So there was an inherent fear of the military of probably taking over, but I think it has been proved beyond doubt that the Indian military is a very professional armed force. It doesn't really get involved in politics. I think you need to trust them to get them into your, on the drawing board together. And even in the negotiations of 1971, after such a magnificent victory, they never asked us what is exactly that you want to retain. I don't understand why would we give away passes that we had captured in 65 war, part of the Tashkent agreement, or in 1971, why would they give away, there were parts which are very clearly, we had refugees coming in from Chittagong, We had Chittagong was a predominantly a Buddhist area, and why wouldn't we ask them that, hello, excuse me, this part belongs to India, and this should be given back to us, and or we should negotiate for this. Why wouldn't they do that? I really don't understand, this bit about our country's inherent distrust of the armed forces for whatever reason, despite such a great history like other democracies like American or British or French. We've never shown any inkling to. I'm not part of it. The military has never shown any inkling to run the affairs of the country or take over. So I think it's very important to get them. The civil military divide should be bridged, and there should be more professional, like the Cargill Review Committee and the GOM report did say about integrating civilian staff and military staff in each other's decision-making processes. And so once you have professional military advice coming in, when you have those, I think it's very important that. So that is something that
Yeah,
that has to be really worked upon, sir.
yeah. So, what you have said is that India lacks professional military advice despite having one of the most professional armies. Actually,
Absolutely.
that's probably the crux of the situation. Fine. There are two ways of looking at it. One is that, look, how do you change it? That's a larger question. At this point of time, I think it might be beyond our remit to talk of it. But within what we have, is there a way that we increase our military assertion, call it military diplomacy, military relations, and what have you, so that our issues in the neighborhood and our people at the countries surrounding us in the neighborhood understand who's the boss in town? Because, like you said, unless they know that you're the boss in town, they'll continue to misbehave the way they are. How do you think that can be done given the certain circumstances where we are in?
I don't know, Sen. the uh, Until the 80s, we were a more capable uh, about force projection. You know the case about
Yeah,
Seychelles in Mauritius. Operation uh, Laldora, which we had a naval ship landing in Seychelles to keep our, the and Mauritius, when the French guy, the French speaking deputy tried to take over the country, and then Indians it's these are operations are not known, and we've done that in, when the SOS came out from Maldives, we rushed the 50 from Agra, we went there, landed there. Now when you look at that, and even in 47, 48, or for that matter in the various things that we've done earlier, so I
yeah, in
really don't know where,
Hyderabad. And
so I don't know what's.
look, we've done a lot of intervention ops or consolidation ops in Hyderabad, in
Yes, sir.
Junagadh, Goa. A lot within the country, outside the country, in Sri Lanka, Maldives. Of course, Bangladesh is the biggest of the lot. So, taking these into consideration, of course, you can't go to war today with every country around you. But I think there's a lot otherwise we could do. I mean, what do you think we could do
I
then?
don't think there's any ban against a war. If the neighborhood gets too difficult and troublesome for us, I don't see any reason. Now, I don't understand why, we just have this report about Pakistan sending anti-tank a lot of ammunition to Bangladesh, which is the enemy there that they're going to use. So if they're going to get belligerent, it's time to probably, teach a couple of arithmetic lessons to them, put them through tuitions for understanding, like it really can't, you know, uh, and I think a good, whether a great, the order is important for us to be maintained. So even those who are, large number of people in our own country who would advocate, they would call Sheikh Hasina a dictatorial kind of a thing. Excuse me, she was your friend, country's friend. So why would she be? And she protected and looked after the interests of kept the secular credentials of that country. We really wouldn't want a Afghanistan kind of a situation in our neighborhood. When we had East Pakistan here, we had a large number of militants, insurgent leaders from the northeast going into East Pakistan and then flying there to Pakistan, and then traveling to China, getting arms training, and then walking back. And so it's interesting for us to a nation has to preserve its territorial integrity. It has to protect its people, its citizens. It's one of our fundamental, is guaranteed under the Constitution. That article, the right to self-defense. Article 51 calls upon everyone, every single citizen, to to be prepared to do what he can or she can to uphold the integrity of this country. So it's important for us to understand that there's nothing like we can't go to war, and I don't think we should
Yeah.
even think about it as a why do we have an army if we don't want to? Then we might as well become a a pacifist and say that okay, come walk over all of us, do what you want. I don't think that that's not something what the Cholas or the Mughals or the Sikh Empire or the Palas or the Vijayanagars or anyone would have done. Now look at Marthanda Verma. He had the British, the Dutch coming in 1756, the Battle of Colachal. The Dutch were really, very brutal and very strong. And Travancore was a tiny principality. That's from where I come. And you had these very aggressive Westerners. They altered, they defined a new level of violence. Whatever said and done, Asia and the rest of the world was a very peaceful country until the advent of the Europeans. Now, these people came up and they came up with a completely brutal level of attacks and destruction and forcible conversions, and they identifying the Muslims as non negotiable with them, and they brought kind of lot of difficult. Uh, so what did Marthanda Burma do when you had this? Look at how we evolved our tactics, sir. Now you know those famous boat races of Kerala. You've seen those long, slimy boats that are there with 100 oarsmen each. Why do you think they came up there? Now, this came up because, you had these huge, mighty ships that are coming from Europe, and we had about 24 guns at each level, and they would bomb away. So there was no way you could escape the destruction that they came up with. So you created narrow, small little boats with 100 people coming in from all directions, and extremely high speeds. You've seen the boat race in Kerala? You must have been very, So they go at extremely, and they would just board the ship and, really completely overwhelm them from all directions, and they would like climb and so they altered the status quo. They just gave a kick to the Dutch East Indies Company, and they went away from India forever. They went to Indonesia. Get the power bank here. So that's an interesting. So we must be ready to really alter the status quo. So it's not something that is we should just timidly accept as a given that
Yeah, I can completely agree with you. I like the idea that we need to alter the status quo. Okay, let me pick your views on what's happening in Bangladesh. We are in a
oh,
situation there, and there's a lot of, you know, angst coming out of Bangladesh and all that. How do you think we should go about this situation in Bangladesh from a military point of view, given the fact that seeking they're seeking ammunition from, Pakistan and things like that?
so it's one. If you look at Pakistan and look at their very foolish and vain ambitions all these years from 47 onwards, it's definitely not a very professional and I'm sorry to say you must respect your opponents and who wants to give a good fight to you, but I would love to see their capacity to actually hold on. And it's a matter of time. The opportunities would come, and when the opportunities come, I think you should be prepared to tackle it. And I think that is where your good luck comes, when your preparedness meets opportunities. And I think that when we prepare for what is going to, it's a possibility that we would have a very belligerent regime there, and we should be actually prepared, and we should be positioning our troops. When there are a lot of lessons even in World War II, when if you read how Hitler went around arming and invading people, and everyone closed their blind eye and no, it won't come to us. We wouldn't be interested. Even America, when they want to stay away from the war till the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor on 6th of December 1941, that's when they entered. Even in World War II. So it isn't it. We don't have to war. We don't have to wait. It like in 1971 on 3rd December when Yahya Khan decided to bomb our airfields. We were already ready, right, sir? You were part of that generation that has actually seen all these active combat and in a sense, so they were ready for it, and it changed the history, the map of the world. And did anyone reset it? Was there a thing that, okay, hello, Microsoft software reset, pre 71? Even in 47, 48, Pakistan invaded India. And could we reset to the original territories of the Maharaja, which included Kailash Mansarovar, by the way, under the Minsar Treaty, under the Treaty of 1684? Those villagers in Kailash Mansarovar Aksai belong to the Maharaja. Have we been able to reset it? No, nobody can. What you've done, like I told you, it's not something that has been handed over or revealed by a word of God. This shall be the boundary. It's not written anywhere. It was not written for Martanda Verma. It was not written for Akbars. It was not written for Harshavardhans. It was not written for Ashoka the Great. It was not written for any of those people. They decided, and those ones who decide that, hello, this is creating a lot of problem for us. We need to end this problem here. We need somebody like that who has a visionary leadership and the guts to do it. That the problem is, today we have become a very, very soft generation. We've not been through the hardships that our father's generation have been through. So we are really not capable of thinking, in a manner that, something that we got to work and prepare for. Everything comes so easily, and that's something that we need to watch out for. We need to prepare ourselves for the worst scenarios. We need to prepare ourselves for all contingencies, and we need to prepare to change. It's like a businessman. He sees an opportunity. He knows when he wants to enter there, and he alters it. People, that is something that needs to be inculcated in our country, sir.
Yeah,
In
I
our
think that's a great point you're making. That you need to be ready to alter the situation. For that, you need strong leadership. You need to have the guts, and if you have to do any of this, you need to have a strong army. And which let me put it this way, and I'd like your views on it. If you have to defend the sovereignty and integrity of this country, I think our armed forces are good enough. But if you want to go out and be a power and say, okay, here I am, and this is what I can do to all of you, and occasionally knock on the other man's door, I don't think we're strong enough for that. Your views on that?
No, Caesar, we were strong enough for a large till the 80s. I don't know, somewhere down the thing and now again, when we do this cross border, we've altered the scenarios in 71 war. We've
Yeah.
changed against much great odds. And even now, earlier when we used to have a cross border raid or someone's head gets beheaded, we had the Aman Ki Asha and all that kind of tamasha that used to go around. I really don't think that you can it's like saying that if I'm nice to the snake is not going to bite me. Excuse me, you're going to be bitten. You got to have a bloody stick and be ready to breathe the bloody thing out of it. So it's like going into a mad dog saying, and then hello, hello, doggy, doggy. It's not going to come and spare you because you're saying hello. And there are a large number of people who believe that. So when we do a cross-border strike and we hit the head of the, where these problems are created, we do put caution into the thing. Otherwise, we were being a very doormat where, I see 814 hijack. I'm just watching that thing. I really wouldn't understand why would you really compromise and why would you actually go and hand over those prisoners. You should have a very clear policy, because see what has happened ultimately in saving those 100, and with all respect to them, is there are people dying all the time for a lot of reasons. More people die of heart attacks and and road accidents than in actual battles. So when you accept this, that there are some things that are uncompromisable. How would you hand over a Masuda, sir, whom you captured with so much of difficulty, to because somebody is held, and then you're just encouraging them? I think we should have a policy of no negotiation with terrorists. You got to talk to somebody. You got to respect the law of the land. We need to do this. There's a reciprocity principle. You cannot have, we have to respect you because you are demanding it or something like that. There has to be a reciprocity. Your liberty doesn't, just because we are nice to you doesn't mean that you can walk all over, and something that I think that is very important for us uh, as a nation to inculcate and to communicate that we are not some, pushovers or doormat that you can walk all over. We've done that in recent years, that we've actually done cross border strikes, and we've seen a reduction in those kind of things. And see, if you see, so what all that is happening now is a reaction to our taking the battle into the enemy's territory. And you actually can, if you study the patterns, it's something that has come out of this. And it's very interesting that the enemy is actually um, reacting to what we're doing instead of us reacting to what they do to us.
Yeah, I think you made some very interesting points. The necessity to take the battle into the other man's land or the enemy land onto your adversary land and reclaim what's yours. I'm not asking you to go and become like Rajarajendra Chola and set up empires outside. But the least I think we can do is reclaim ours. So fine, you given out a lot of ideas and a lot of new issues, and I see a lot of queries coming up. Shall we take a few questions with
Sure, sure.
your? Yeah.